Alldus podcast is brought to you by Alldus International, supplying your expert AI and digital transformation staffing needs across the US and Europe. Today, you are listening to our AI in Action series, where leading minds in AI from across the world share their story, success, and advice. AI in Action cuts through the hype and explores the true impact of artificial intelligence in our world today.
You're listening to AI in Action. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Max Dawson. Max is the Managing Director at BlueLabs Analytics. Max, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
It's our pleasure. Max, let's start with yourself. Can you give us a bit of a background of your journey in technology, from where you got started, some of the roles you've held along the way, and take us up to today and what's led you to being the MD at BlueLabs?
So I think I have a pretty unusual path that's led me to working with data and technology. And that is due to the fact that my background is in the humanities. Prior to joining the world of data and analytics, I worked as a professor at Northwestern University in the Department of Radio, Television, and Film. And specifically, I was a professor who focused on the history of technology, media technology in particular. So the history, the development, the impact of different video and communication technologies, focusing a lot on television, DVRs, web video, mobile video, and really trying to contribute historical perspectives to contemporary conversations around evolving technologies that helped people, whether they be aspiring filmmakers or just students with a general interest in media and technology, understand where contemporary developments fit into a much larger trajectory of technological innovation and change. So as you can see, I've been studying technology, I'm thinking about technology, but I'm not actually involved in technology, data, any kind of quantitative methodologies, even in the slightest in my prior career. However, I did have a tremendous amount of curiosity and a desire to do more than simply comment on and study and historicize contemporary developments, but rather to be in the middle of them. And so from Northwestern, I migrated to Los Angeles and specifically to working in media research focused around, at least initially, the adoption and use of new technologies, video technologies in particular, by young people. It was one area that I had a tremendous amount of interest, especially having been on college campuses for about a decade prior to that, seeing how my students used video technology and the different ways in which they interacted with content, created content, interacted with one another through the content they enjoyed. So I initially came in a kind of qualitative consultative capacity to work with television networks and studios to help them better understand how young people, I guess what we would now call millennials or Gen Z, were employing new video and communication technologies, social media, et cetera. From there, from an initial beachhead in the world of research that was very much focused on qualitative methodologies, so not simply focus groups and more descriptive, qualitative interviewing, but even in-person ethnographic research, going into people's homes, observing them and their families, consuming content. From there, I started to get exposed to the world of quantitative methodologies and to analytics, advanced analytics, and data science. And I found in the world of data science and analytics, I found a type of thinking and a set of competencies that I lacked, but that I admired so much and that I wanted to learn more about. And so I was paired up very early on with a brilliant psychologist, a PhD psychologist who specialized in taxonomies, specialized in human categorization, the different sorts of psychological and mental processes that go into the categorization of the world. And my interest in knowledge about the history of media, content, and technology, his deep understanding of quantitative methodologies and statistical analytic approaches allowed us to come up with a very successful television and media content research product known as emotional DNA. And that product was in widespread use by the time I left that position. It was being used by dozens of networks and studios to inform program development, test pilots, branding, scheduling, overall strategy. So that exposure, that taste I got, and the success of that initial foray opened up avenues for me to work with other people in the world of data science. And that is what brought me to BlueLabs, because I was first introduced to some of the methodologies that were developed by my eventual colleagues at BlueLabs and some of the other people who were involved in the progressive / democratic political sector, the people who had been behind the scenes during the Obama campaign and the Obama re-election campaign. And I was exposed to these methodologies from the standpoint of how can we adopt what the progressive analytics movement has pioneered in the realm of electoral politics and advocacy? How can we adopt that to the marketing and the development and marketing of culture, and specifically pop culture and specifically movies? It was an opportunity. I was basically given a challenge in my new position: find a way to blend the world of movie research and progressive data analytics to come up with a more effective way of marketing movies. And I was completely bowled over. And much like I had been previously when I was exposed to this PhD taxonomist, I found once again that not only did I have a great deal of curiosity, but that my background as an academic was very useful. An academic with no specialization in statistical methodologies, analytics, data, technology, but rather that my ability to listen, learn, and most specifically translate were very valuable. And I found myself falling into a role as a translator between the world of analytics and the world of non-specialists, people who were keen to unleash the power of advanced analytics, specifically around targeting and being more effective with their marketing, being able to pair a compelling message delivered on the right channel to the right specific individual. And that was something that the movie industry was struggling with. And suddenly I found myself having access to some of the most brilliant minds in the world, specifically people who became my colleagues at BlueLabs, who had really invented a new paradigm for how to use consumer and publicly available data to make outreach more effective, meaningful, and efficient. And so in that process, I was able to co-develop a big project with BlueLabs. And in the development of that project, I was so taken with the quality of the work and the definitive declarative nature of BlueLabs' mission as a progressively oriented, mission-driven, cause-driven organization that I made a pitch. And I said, rather than collaborating from different companies, let me come work at BlueLabs. Let me be a translator between the world of data and the world of entertainment, as well as other commercial verticals. Let me use these skills I have to help you understand the needs of industries maybe where BlueLabs or advanced analytics companies haven't worked previously, and let me help those clients understand the technological advances and the methodological advances that have been embraced in the world of progressive politics, but that the rest of the world, and especially the entertainment industry, has a lot of catching up to do on. And that was 2019, I joined BlueLabs, and ever since I have been working toward and working on that goal of better bridging the methods and the mindsets and the approaches of the worlds of analytics as it's practiced in the entertainment industry and in the political and advocacy spheres.
Excellent. Thank you so much for the background. It's really great to hear about your journey and what led you to BlueLabs. And in that journey, you've already given us a lot of insight into the work that you do at BlueLabs. But taking a step back before we jump into your role, for anyone who's not familiar, to add a bit more context, who are BlueLabs? What is the mission of the organization? And then we can talk about the role that analytics data plays.
BlueLabs grew, as I mentioned, directly out of the team that was instrumental in developing the techniques that elected and re-elected President Obama. The founders of the company, who are still actively involved, and when I actively involved, not just sitting up in a corner office, but working on projects, running surveys, building models, mentoring junior staff members. They really invented, they were part of the invention of a number of techniques that are now pretty commonplace, techniques that drew upon publicly available data, commercially available data, as well as voter data, to build predictive models that would help to identify individual voters' propensities to vote in general, to vote for particular candidates, or to be supporters of particular causes, as well as their ability to be persuaded and the specific types of messages they would respond to. So a huge part of what BlueLabs has always done, from its origins in politics to its work in entertainment and healthcare and advocacy now, has to do with the concept of persuasion. What types of messages will impact people's opinions and ultimately result in action? The most simple version of that is testing a population, surveying a population to see what their feelings on a particular policy initiative might be, for example, climate change, and then exposing a number of members of that population to a specific message that is intended to shift their opinion, to educate them, to make them more aware of or more motivated to act on a particular issue. We take the results of that survey and, using modeling techniques and a comprehensive consumer file that covers pretty much all individuals 18 plus in the United States, we build out these predictive models so that we can give every individual a score that predicts the likelihood that they will, for example, be moved by that particular message. Once that an individual is highly likely to be moved in the right direction by a message, or another individual won't move at all no matter what you say to them, whereas a third individual will actually move in the opposite direction, become more entrenched, will have a backlash effect. Once you know that, you suddenly can take a lot of the guesswork out of outreach. We often quote a famous maxim in the world of marketing and marketing technology about, it's been attributed to many people, but I'm wasting half of my advertising budget. The problem is I just don't know which half. And that hoary chestnut is true today, I think, for many organizations, as it was when it was originally uttered in the age of radio and print's supremacy. What we're trying to do is take some of that guesswork out to say, why spend money on advertising to an individual who cannot have their opinion be changed, or whose opinion already is where it needs to be? The precision of digital advertising and programmatic allows us to target individuals on a one-to-one basis, to tailor a message to you specifically, as opposed to all men 35 plus with a certain income and education level. It's about recognizing the diversity of the American population. It's about recognizing that things like demographic characteristics are not defining of our opinions, of our outlooks, of our behaviors, and about really tailoring messaging and outreach campaigns, whether they be political in nature or commercial, to the individuals who are most in need of receiving that message. And so that approach that BlueLabs was instrumental in the development and mastery of has pretty much changed how political campaigns are run. And progressive and forward-thinking companies across a number of different verticals are embracing those techniques in an effort to be more effective, not only cost-effective, but also more impactful in their outreach to consumers.
You are listening to the Alldus Podcast. When you're looking to scale your team, or if you are interested in showcasing your company in a future episode, reach out today. Or if you're in the market for a new role, visit our website to view open positions, www.alldus.com.
Is Is there a particular example or project that you and your team have worked on that you could share with us that would talk about the impact from concept or idea that a company had when they approached BlueLabs, and walk us through the journey from helping them understand just what's possible to behind the scenes, the analytics, the engineering, the data science behind it all that makes it happen, and then the ultimate result for the customer?
Sure. We just wrapped a project recently for a big national or international QSR chain that wanted to understand better the degree to which consumers felt that they could trust this particular organization, that this particular brand stood for values that were consistent with those held by the members of its community. So we started out with a survey. And when we survey, we draw very much on the same commercially available data that we use for the creation of our models and for the informing of our targets. We survey from a pool of people for whom we have access to data that allows us to know a great deal about their backgrounds without having to ask them. So we don't have to go through an extensive battery of questions about who you are and what you do and how many kids, because we're able to use this publicly available data to pair individual respondents with that commercially available data that is accessible. And so with access to that data, we're able to take people's survey responses and to look at what qualities are the most predictive of the outcome that we are seeking to impact. And in this particular case, the two things we wanted to measure were a baseline KPI of trust and then a persuasion KPI, the degree to which specific message might move people more in the direction of trusting that brand, feeling positively about that brand. And so the reason why I bring up that commercially available data is because very often, as I mentioned earlier, the biggest predictor is not the superficial demographic characteristics that we might be identified by traditionally: gender, ethnicity, income, education, etc. Those are obviously important. But as we've seen in recent elections, there are many other factors that can be equally or even much more determinative of an individual's proclivity to, for example, hold a certain political ideology or vote a certain way. And that's just as true for the world of brands and products and interactions that individual consumers have with the companies they do business with. So we take that data and we try to figure out of the hundreds, if not 1,000+ fields of data that we might have available for an individual anonymized consumer, because this is all done in an anonymized level. We have that demographic data, that consumer data, that behavioral data, but it's all stripped from anything that would allow us to identify that person in the real world. But we are interested in trying to figure out what about that individual makes them most likely to fill in the blank. And so it might be that they're a cat owner instead of a dog owner. It might be that they have a hunting license. It might be that their home is in an area where the average length of a person living in their domicile is 2+ years versus an area where people tend to have shorter tenures within a particular home. All of these factors, including the more standard demographic features and geographic considerations, can be highly predictive of an individual's likelihood to perform a certain action or hold a certain belief. And so in this particular case, we built these two models, a trust model and a persuasion model. And using those models, we attempted to isolate people who fell in the middle of the spectrum on trust. And when I say the spectrum, we took our model and we assigned a score to every one of 250 million American adults, again, on an anonymous basis. But every one of those anonymized individuals received a score telling us how likely they are to trust this brand, just as a baseline. And so we took the people in the middle of that spectrum. We rank ordered everyone in America, and we took the people who were in the middle. People who didn't trust the company already, we would say they're already in our tent, and not the people who are at the bottom end of that spectrum, because we thought they might be lost causes, people who no matter how much we directed at them, we couldn't move the needle. But we took the middle as our sweet spot. And then we looked at the individuals who fell in that big, broad middle, and we attempted to identify the message that had the strongest and most consistent impact on moving them toward greater trust and positive feelings about this company and this brand. And in the combination of those two models, we were able to identify about 15 million persuadable individuals, people who we thought would really be benefited by being exposed to this message. And with that information, we're able to take that list of 15 million people, 15 million real addressable people for whom we don't know who they are. We know their data. We pass that data on to our partners, the clients we work with, who then work with their digital agency and translate that information into a campaign, a person level campaign that across digital and social platforms, and even through things like direct mail or targeted television buys, can make sure that we are getting the right message in front of those people and hopefully move the needle with them in terms of their relationship to that brand.
Incredibly interesting work. Thank you for sharing that example. It really adds color to the work that you're doing and the impact it can have. Final question from me, Max. I want to shift our attention to the team that you've built and really how you go about attracting talent, because obviously with the shortage of supply and the increased demand for people working in this sphere, often it's about the mission. So when you're speaking to candidates, whether they're data scientists, engineers, analytics folks, what do you tell them about the work at BlueLabs that gets them to join you guys over some of the other great opportunities?
I think BlueLabs' reputation precedes it, and specifically the opportunity to work with people like Elon Kriegel or Dan Porter is in many instances enough to draw the cream of the crop of emerging data scientists and analysts and engineers. So we never have any shortage of individuals who want to be mentored by some of the people who are very much responsible for the development and advancement of the field. The other aspect of our particular hiring proposition is the chance to impact world history through contributions to Democratic candidates' campaigns and causes. A lot of the work we do is on electoral politics. And so name the race nationwide, odds are BlueLabs is involved in one way or another. That can be presidential politics, that can be down to races, and certainly lots in between with respect to congressional races. Beyond that, we're also involved heavily with progressive causes, environmental organizations, unions, groups representing racial equity. And we have as a part of our mission to work with causes in companies that we consider to hold values that are consistent with our own. And so the opportunity for young aspiring professionals to work in an organization where they know that they have an opportunity to contribute to projects that make a direct, appreciable impact on the world as we know it and live in it is very appealing. I have been blown away. I am in no way being hyperbolic. I've never worked with a more talented group of individuals at BlueLabs. There isn't a single individual who I've encountered amongst our 70-ish plus employees where you have that response that you sometimes have working in larger organizations where you say, is this somebody's cousin or nephew? How did this person get in this position? I am constantly astounded by the quality of our people and especially the quality of our junior employees. We have a number of young people who work at our company who I have begged in my mind to say, just wait until these people are leading the field of analytics or leading entire organizations, teams, even corporations, or occupying prominent roles in the world of political advocacy and data analytics. We somehow have this amazing track record of attracting and nurturing unbelievable talent. And I am the beneficiary of that because I mentioned earlier, I came to this world as an outsider. And so I learn at the feet of masters like the aforementioned founders of this company, but I also learn on a daily basis from the 20-something analysts who are a few years out of college, who are wizards with R, with model building, with database engineering, who are able to take client problems and build elegant solutions, far more elegant than you would expect from people who are so fresh in their careers. And so it's been a fantastic experience for me to see the process of BlueLabs talent identification and nurturing, and to be a beneficiary of this process myself, even in a more leadership role, where I'm constantly working with the best and the brightest young minds and being able to develop solutions for clients that, quite frankly, consistently over-deliver in a way that I've never seen before. So I am very proud of my work at BlueLabs. If you can't tell, it could be that in part because I've never been in an organization like this before that is so mission-driven and that has such a great deal of investment from the top level all the way to the bottom, where everyone feels like we are working for a common cause. But it has certainly impacted me, and it has certainly electrified my interest in the field of data, especially as it's being pushed forward by the progressive data analytics world.
Max, thank you so much for today. Really appreciate your time coming on and talking to us about your journey, what's led you to BlueLabs, sharing some of the amazing work you're doing, the environment of superstars that you guys have cultivated, and why it's such an impactful place to work. So we've learned a lot from this, and we wish you and everyone at BlueLabs the best of luck in the years ahead. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Alldus Podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. We are available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and any Android podcast of choice. You can also head over to our website, www.alldus.com, to listen to more podcasts, view our open roles, and stay up to date with industry news. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned for more great episodes coming very soon.